Right, 3, 2, 1. What's happening, everyone? And welcome back to the greatest podcast you've never even heard of. This MCPodcasting episode 139. So in this episode, we're joined by John Monahan. John is obviously writer, director, all-round film guy. He's on the podcast, talk movies, cinema, and he also talked about his latest project, which is PITBULLS, which is going to be a short movie about, can I say? A bit of
Maybe
boxing.
That's not say.
Yeah, a bit of boxer anyway. But yeah, it was good. He actually recently started a production company with one of our mates, Declan Proctor, Moonbeam Productions, which is obviously you find him on Instagram. We didn't get a chance to talk about the production company, but maybe he'll come on in the future and give a bit more information. But yeah, enjoy.
You are now listening to MCPodcasting.
There he is! Look at that beard.
It's a second lockdown beard.
You had that beard before lockdown. What are you on about?
Yeah, but it was trimmer, and then we went back in. I have no effort to shave it.
It's the mustache as well. Not too feel like you just curl it and be like a bad guy from a Bond movie or something. How's it going, mate? Anyway,
Not too bad. How are you? We haven't really spoken a while.
I haven't physically saw you since fucking like last January, was it? My last shift?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think you were in after to see something in the cinema, and then that Paddy's Day we closed down, and we haven't been back in nearly a year. So
it's mental, isn't it? Like I remember, like, because I think it was your birthday at the end of January now or something, and I was leaving. I was like, sure, we'll go out for your birthday, but I was like, I couldn't because of work, and then I was like, oh, sure, St. Paddy's Day in a few more weeks. We'll just go out for St. Paddy's Day. There's loads of time to go out for drinking with John. Loads of time.
Is the Odyssey closed now? By the way, I'm Stephen, by the way, mate. How you doing?
Stephen.
Did they close the Odyssey then, cinema, or what happened there? What is that?
Yeah, we were in, well, there were being talk that we got bought over by Cineworld was the whole conversation that was being had before we left and when that was going to happen. But they closed like half the screens because they were doing construction underneath it because the whole pavilion got shut down for like months.
Yeah.
There was something like a 14 million or billion pound refurb.
14 billion.
It was people coming in to us and going, how do I get down to Pizza Hut? And we're like, Pizza Hut's closed. Like, you can't go down there.
Yeah.
There's no bottom floor, fuck's sake.
No, there was nothing, and it was freezing. Working in there because they just must have opened that canopy on the roof, and it was just like windy inside. So we were just working away at like half the number of screens, and then just by the time we got to Paddy's Day, we were showing Darby O'Gill, so we had like a couple of hundred people in to see that. And then after we got called out, and we're like, listen, this COVID thing's happening really bad, so you can all go home, and then just haven't been back.
It's mental. Look, I remember you were advertising for St. Paddy's Day, and you were telling me there's hundreds of people going in, and I was like, oh, that's a good number. See, the idea of over 100 people or hundreds of people gathering in a small cinema now to watch a movie, like it's just mental, isn't it?
Yeah, because I went to the cinema a couple of times in between lockdowns. We went to Cityside or Yorkgate or whatever
it's called these days.
To call it. And they were doing they showed Empire Strikes Back and then they showed Jurassic Park, so we went to that, and you had to pick a seat, but they'd like X'd out the two seats next to you, like every two seats.
Yeah,
so that was the way that was happening because of COVID. But in our case, in the Odyssey, we just never reopened because it must have been worth the hassle, because I think they were only open for just over a month, and then all the other lockdowns happened, so it didn't seem like it was going to be worth our while. So I haven't been back in just under a year.
That's crazy. Do you think they will reopen at some point, that Odyssey Cinema, or is that gone now?
I'm not sure. I think maybe because with Cineworld coming in, all the construction happening, they might just keep us closed till they reopen, then get everything done up, and then bring everybody back in. But I don't know. We hear very little. We get an email every so often being like, hope you're doing all right and whatever, and you're still getting your furlough. Right, see you later. And then that's it. So,
but I always thought that this time would be the perfect time for Cineworld or whatever, whoever is coming in to come in now and do the construction while cinemas are kind of closed. Because once cinemas open up, that's when they're going to start making money. That's when the government aren't going to start paying people like furlough staff anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got extended. The furloughs got extended there last week till September. So I think they're just kind of going to wait it out till after everybody's got the vaccine, hopefully, and then we can all kind of go back to work.
What do you think? See, I don't know. See, whenever they extend this furlough scheme, obviously it's great that like people need it, but it just makes me go, right, well, we're locked down to September then, aren't we? You know what I mean? It just like every time they extend it, and then they're like, oh, we'll see this in a couple of weeks. But you extended the furlough 6 months. I'm like, right, we're clearly not coming out then until
like the lockdown's going to end in July, but the furlough scheme's up until September. Something doesn't add up there.
Okay.
I've been thinking from like the first lockdown when they started extending things, I was like, right, realistically, they have like a time frame. This is going to be on and off happening for a year, but they don't want to tell people, right, you might be in the house for about a year. So they'll give you like, okay, we're locked down for 2 months. And at the end of 2 months, they're like, oh, we'll give it another month. The numbers are spiking. I think they're giving us piece by piece because they don't want to just come on the news and be like, right, you're back in the house for 6 months.
You thought they had some sort of plan, is what you thought?
At the beginning, and then
they started to lose hope.
I'm still in the house.
These guys don't know what they're doing.
I was like, I keep going for big walks once a day and nothing else. But I mean, that's all it's been. But I mean, I more than most have got things done during. Like, I feel like I've been more productive during lockdown. Like, I made a short film. I moved out into an apartment from my house, and we had just been on holiday 2 weeks before everything shut down. Me and my best friend were in like Europe and then down south doing a road trip, and we came back, and then 2 weeks later, COVID happened.
You weren't in China or anything?
No, we were meant to go to China.
Serious?
We had been in Dublin, and we were at the embassy getting handing our visa applications, and we had to come back 6 days later to pick our passports up. But within that 6 days, it'd be all over the news, like, oh, there's been this outbreak in Wuhan and whatever. And I was like, that's okay. It's like 4 hours from Shanghai where we were going because we've got friends that teach over there.
Virus won't spread that fast with it.
It's like, it's okay, 4 hours. That's ages away. It's like two trips to Derry on the train. And it took 5 days before British Airways emailed my friend. We're like, yous aren't going. So by the time we went to go get our passports, we like knew we weren't going. So we got the passports back, and I opened it, and we had an approved visa for 3 months to China, and we couldn't go. So we were in Dublin. So we went to O'Connell Street and went to get a coffee, and we just planned a whole new trip because it was like, I've booked 2 weeks off work. So I don't want to go back to work. We'll book something else. So we ended up going to like Amsterdam, Brussels, and Berlin. And when we got into the passport control in Berlin, the guy he opened on the wrong page on the visa, and he was like, did you come from China? I'm like, no.
Knock him down.
The reason we're here is because we couldn't get to go to China. It's just this big angry German like passport control officer. He was like, oh, that's okay. And then he like ushered me along. So then we came back, and 2 weeks later, nobody was allowed to go anywhere.
But it's weird how, bless you, Steve. It's weird how naive we all were at the start. Obviously, we didn't know. It's something we actually never really lived. So how we meant to know like what was going to happen? But like everyone was like thinking, in a few weeks we'll be fine, and a few months, and then that's like literally a year.
Years.
Yeah.
It's been a year. But the idea now, like you had her before it.
It's a true story. 100%.
But even the idea now, like if Stephen used to come down to this apartment, and we used to do the podcast, and even like whenever the lockdown eased during the summer, you're coming down. I need the idea of you coming here, Stephen, and doing the podcast.
It's getting weird, isn't it?
It's getting weird, isn't it? That shouldn't be the case. So, by the way, I know we're jumping all over the place here. Something I want to ask you about later on, but we may as well bring it up now since we're talking about it. Is like cinemas in general, because me and Stephen talked about cinemas in like what is the future like for cinemas? Do you reckon cinemas are going to be obsolete? We're going to be a thing we tell our kids about in like 20 years time, going back in the day we used to go to this one room, all gather and watch a big screen the movie at the same time. I know what, you couldn't pause it, you couldn't fucking pause it. Like what, obviously me personally, I'm a bit more hopeful. I love cinemas. I don't want cinemas to go, but for you working in like the movie industry, like how do you see like the cinemas operating in the future?
I'd be like you, like I hope they don't, because there's just always been something, even from like I was a kid, you know, when you get in and you're all sitting there and you've got like your popcorn or whatever, and the lights dip and everybody just goes quiet. And even though now it's like half an hour of ads starting, everybody still shuts up because the lights dip. And it was always an experience. I was like, I love this. Like, this is such a good way to like experience something, like your experience with like there is actually like proof that people like don't laugh at comedies as hard, and if you're not in a room with other people laughing, like you could sit and watch like your favorite comedy at home, and you'll do like that, exhale nose laugh. You're like, that's the most you'll do, even though you love that film and find it funny. But when you're in a room with like 100 strangers and everybody's like laughing at something like Iron Man said in an Avengers film, it makes it like way more funnier. So I kind of hope that experience isn't lost, especially because it's something I do and want to continue to do, is make film. Like I want it to be seen on the biggest screen possible. Like anybody that does anything creative, you want it to be like the best it can be, and that's kind of the best place. There's been an issue a lot with this, like HBO Max saying we're just going to drop everything. So if you don't live in a country that has cinemas open, we're just going to put it on HBO Max, so you get it first day on there. And there was cinemas that really like bit back at that. Like they had an issue with AMC cinemas, I think, where like we're not going to carry Warner Brothers films because we're going to lose so much money if people can stay at home. And I could see the point of that, but at the same time, as somebody that worked in a cinema for the last couple of years, but then also on and off worked in the film industry, I seen the completely two different sides. Like you're on a set and like there's a first AD and he's like the most positive guy in the world, and at 8 a.m. when you're tired you want to kill him, but he's like, okay everybody, we're making dreams, and you're like, okay. But then when you go and people are coming into the cinema and they're like, and you know this as well, Dan, from working there, like people are grumbling about the prices, or they're bringing their kids in to see like a 15 and the kid's like 8, and you're like, we can't let that kid in to see it, and it's like he watches worse in the house, and it's like, well, this is the house, like he can't go see that. So they'd rather like watch it at home because that kid can watch all the murder clown films they want at home, but we can't let them in, so there was a lot of things I felt over the last couple of years working in a cinema that were like an issue for people. Like people were like a lot grumblier, I found, especially when we changed entrance that time. People took longer to have to come up. They were just raging, and it was like I genuinely heard customers being like, it's barely worth the effort. Like I could just stay in the house and watch this. And it's
I think you're right. And I think we need to also understand that we all love the cinema, but we aren't what makes the cinema money. We go anyway. No. We go and see films that come out 20 years ago in the cinema. Cinema make money off people who go 2-3 times a year, and it's like an event, and it's like to bring all their families, and the granny and the granda goes, and it's huge, and it's all about habit, especially with this lockdown. People's habits change, and if people just get used to watching films in the house, and people just get used to not going to the cinema, then it's so hard for cinemas to get that back. But they'll always get us back, but we won't keep them in a business.
Or do you think it could be the opposite, that people are so like annoyed, or people are so fed up of watching movies in the small screen, they want cinemas open again, even though they weren't going to the cinemas as frequently as us three, for example. They're going to be busting the go now, because the idea of getting out and watching a movie, or just getting out in general, going to a bar, going to a restaurant, it's just like so amazing that it's actually going to see like a rise in cinema goers. Well,
but you not think most people that go to the cinema, it's not like the popular thing to do. Like if you speak to people and like a crowd of people and be like, oh, who likes the cinema? Loads of people will be like, I actually don't like going to the cinema. And there's you find people who never go, like hasn't been to the cinema in years.
My sister hates going to the cinema. Like she absolutely hates it. She doesn't see the point. Like she's like, you can't like get up and go to the toilet and pause it and get your snacks or whatever, and it's so expensive. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'll go to like a double or triple bill at midnight because I want to see like 2 Avengers films I've seen before, and then the new one at midnight. Like I've went to double and triple bills of films I don't even like. Like I went to like the Independence Day double bills. And we came out of we went to the Independence Day one. We went to see Terminator, and it was Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and I was like, brilliant. But then at midnight, Genesis had just come out.
Jesus.
But in between each film, the way you get that break. Yeah, we were going out for like a smoke, and I was like, after Terminator 2, I was like, right, we've seen Terminator 1 and 2 on the big screen. We could leave. Like, we don't have to see this new one. It doesn't look good. And my friend was like, no, James Cameron says this is the real Terminator 3.
He says it all the time.
2 hours later, the credits started rolling. I turned to my friend, I was like, we should have left. Like, why do we stay? It's 2 a.m.
That was shocking.
That's like us, like you said, like we would do that because we are fans of this thing, whereas the general like populations, like when Endgame was like 3 hours, I know it became the highest grossing film of all time, so it's kind of a moot point, but like there were a lot of people like, what do you mean it's like over 3 hours? Like they don't want to sit for that length of time, whereas we're like, brilliant. Fourth Avengers film, we'll sit for 3 hours. Like,
I want more actually.
Yeah, I was like I seen the Snyder cuts coming out, and it's 4 hours, and I just keep sighing. I'm like, 4 hours, really? But it's like I gotta watch that at home now. Whereas if that got a cinema release, I 100% would get friends together and go see it, whether I like the idea of it or not. It's like, let's go. But it is one of those things of maybe people don't quite go back out the way they used to, but will be some, like you said, Dan, like that we're sick of being in the house so much that they'll go do it. But I think even people with kids, like it's really expensive for them to bring a crowd of kids to the cinema, and a pain in the ass. Whereas if they can watch like Trolls 2 was one of the first ones released during the lockdown, VOD, and it was like it made more money than it would have made in cinemas, because they're like, brilliant, we'll pay for this. Get all the kids are distracted for hour 45 minutes, and we can just keep playing it if they want to watch it again and again. Whereas that's what, like a 30-odd pound in cinema tickets alone for them to bring like a squad of kids to go see that film. So I think maybe for parents and stuff, like they'll just not really go back except for big things like big releases that the kids are really excited for. Or maybe they're like somebody like us that has kids that's like that loves films and has kids. They're like, oh, I want my like son or daughter to experience it like in a cinema, so they have that same thing I have. But I don't know if it'll properly go back, which I think is a shame.
But do you not think also maybe it's the time of movies and stuff, and what movies have been about recently? It's more like our attention span has been quite poor. Like people don't like, and it's obviously the worst thing in the world is probably watching a movie is probably this fucking thing here, a mobile fucking phone. Because what I need to do when I watch a movie, I throw my phone across the room onto the sofa, just because I'm throw it against the wall every day. I should stop doing that. It's getting
many times have you to replace that phone this lockdown?
13 just.
Like Star Wars is on again, and you just wing the phone.
But like our attention span is becoming less and lesser, not too, especially like with the TVs and stuff. And I think I don't want to bring up like modern movies and all too. I think modern movies are amazing. I think like some directors out there are just fantastic and all too, and especially up and coming directors and all too. I don't want to, because I didn't like what I think it was Martin Scorsese said about the Avengers. They're not actually movies; they're like a theme park ride or something out there.
Yeah,
and maybe there's some truth in that to a certain degree in terms of like what people want to see from a movie these days. They don't want to see a slow burner like story like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. They want to see they want to see the Hulk fighting fucking Thor, or the Hulk fighting fucking Iron Man. Now they want constant action and quick dialogue rather than actually, as I said, slow burner. Like, but then I'm probably wrong, because look at something like Dave Fincher, for example. Dave Fincher's a slow burner director.
I mean, he put Mank out this year on Netflix, and it was quite slow paced. But I think we've been seeing it, especially like in the last couple of weeks with WandaVision. Like it's trying to do like a slow burn mystery, almost Twin Peaks thing, and also be like a character drama. And all we've seen for weeks is people like speculating that things were going to happen and characters were going to show up, and then they're disappointed in the show every week because they're not like now wired to watch week to week. And
it's also
like sit for that mystery.
Also because there's 500,000 YouTubers making theories and then getting everyone all riled up, being like, "Oh, this person's going to show up," and you're like, "But you haven't got a clue." And now people are disappointed in the show, but they never said they were going to do that.
And the worst thing is, it was always like the fan theories that people latch on to. I was like, do you honestly think this is like the Mr. Fantastic one? They're like, Reed Richards is that aerospace engineer. He's going to show up. I'm like, they haven't written the Fantastic Four script yet. Like, they haven't cast Reed Richards. They're not going to get John Krasinski in a Fantastic Four outfit, and he's just in a tent in WandaVision. That's the first member of that team you see on TV. It's like, no. Why? And everybody got mad that it was nobody. It's like, does it have to be somebody? Like,
or the theory was that I think me and Steve we were talking about it, about like that thing where Wanda's created, everyone becomes like a mutant, and then that brings in the X-Men. I'm like,
well, they could still do that.
Still could, but like obviously they didn't do that. Spoiler, like they didn't do it in this series season anyway. And I was like, for fuck's sake, I was kind of raging actually, mate. That would have been an amazing idea, but like, why am I getting annoyed for? Is something that I just made up my head.
You have to keep it in your mind. The show was about Wanda. And that's what they've done. And they literally showed her whole experience, her whole trauma. And that's what it was. It was that from the outset. They sprinkled in other stuff, but they always do. But they're not going to just completely divert the attention from Wanda and be like, here's the X-Men and here's Fantastic Four. It's like, what about Wanda? You know what I mean?
That's probably what DC done wrong, to be fair, wasn't it? They kind of choose your Batman
too much, too quick.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck's Batman is fantastic. He probably deserved his own movie, but like we didn't get enough of him. But like, here's Batman, that looks really cool. But here's Superman, and here's fucking Wonder Woman. It's like, who do I care about again here?
Yeah, because Batman versus Superman did an adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns. It did an adaptation of The Death of Superman. It introduced the rest of the Justice League and a new Batman.
Then 2 hours
film, and I was like, "Oh, nice, Superman's dead. We can't kill him in a better film again." Because you wanted to do everything too quick. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and they were like, what, 2 films in at that point. So it's like, why are you already doing like a victory lap of like DC's greatest stories in the second film? And why is Batman doing so many murders? And then now we're getting the Snyder Cut where he's going to do 4 hours of murders and he's going to swear, supposedly.
I'm really looking forward to that then.
I hope it's good. I haven't seen Justice League at all, to be fair, but I heard this is coming out, so I told myself I'm gonna view it. But I actually was hoping it was going to be in the cinemas, but obviously can't see cinemas being open by then. But when is it out?
It's out in like 9 days or something. It's the 16th, I think. But I mean, I'm not that snobby about films. Like, if somebody said to me that their favorite film is 2015's Fantastic Four, I'd be like, right, like that's not a good film, but me arguing with you is not going to make it not your favorite film anymore, and then I'm going to be mad that you like that crap film.
I'm just bullshit. Like, you've never met anyone. You've never met anyone who said that. Blandius right now.
No, no one's ever said that. But when that person comes around, Dan, that one person,
you tell me.
But it's that thing of like, I got sick of being like an angry teen that liked film because everybody was like, oh, you know, it's like snobbery. It's like, but it's like people arguing about like Batman versus Superman and whether it's a masterpiece or it's a piece of shit. I'm like, it's not great and it's kind of stupid. There's a jar of piss in it. It's like, if that's your favorite film, fair play.
Yeah.
Because like, for when I was a kid, up until I was a teenager, my favorite Batman film was Batman Forever, and nobody told me to shut up.
Great movie.
It is a great movie. But like, if somebody says now, like, no, that's not the best Batman film, The Dark Knight is, I'm gonna be like, okay.
I've never liked the idea of someone telling you what your favorite film is.
Yes,
shut the fuck up.
It's subjective, but I mean, that's the hardest thing making films as well. Is I'm like, is this actually good, or do I just think it's good because I like this story, and I'm gonna put this into a festival, and everyone's gonna be like, that's not good. Why did you make that? I'm gonna be like, oh, sorry lads, I wasted your time.
So how do you do that, John? Anyway, so obviously when you're writing a movie or if you're writing a script for a movie, do you get someone to proofread it, someone to read over it just to verify this isn't crap? Because as you said, sometimes it can work both ways. You can write something and go, this is shit, but then someone reads it and says this is good, or you read it and like, this is amazing, and someone else reads it and it's shit. So how do you have someone you go to that actually
I have like a small group of a few people who I'm like, when it's very early, there'll be like 3 or 4 people, like my best friend who is the editor of PITBULLS. He's also my roommate, which means I can go hammer his door and be like, are you done editing that film yet? And he's like, I'm sleeping. So I'll send it to him normally first, and then like I have like a small group of people, and that's on like a first draft or a very, very rough first draft, because it's like, it's not really worked out yet. Of like, I know where the plot from A to B to C is going to go, and I know who the characters are, but it's really rough. And some scenes are like, sometimes when you're writing a scene and you kind of run out of ideas, I try to still just keep writing it, even if it's waffle. So then when I go back to kind of edit it and do another draft, I can just cut all the stuff I didn't like, but at least I have something to like work with.
Yeah.
It's not like a blank page. So I'll send that first draft out, and then when they come back and they're like, oh, I really like this bit, but this kind of didn't ring true to me or whatever, and we kind of go back and forth talking about what the story is. And then I'll send them out a second draft, but also then pick like 1 or 2 more people to be like, hey, what do you think of this? And eventually it's like maybe 6, 7 people I kind of have through the process, because it depends on what I'm doing. Like if it's a short that I want to make, that's multiple drafts. So you need like new people to bounce different drafts off, because so many things have changed from the very first one. Because you're going, oh, I like that at the time, but now that we're doing this, and I'm thinking I gotta get an actor to do this scene, so that's probably not the best way for a performance to go. So I'll change it. I'll change that line, or I'll change that motivation, because I think this would be better. Because by the time you get to the end, that ties back to this, and you work that out as you go. So it's good to have people to kind of fire each version off to. But if it's a feature, it's hard to get people to read like a 90-odd page script. And I've had to do it a couple of times because NI Screen do a scheme where you put in a first draft of a feature script, and I've wrote 3 features at this point, and they were all like 90 plus pages, and you're going to like your best friend and going, can you sit here for like at minimum 90 minutes and read this thing that I wrote? But it's good that I have some people that will do that. But it depends, like, yeah, I'll send it over and we'll like do live readings of the crap drafts. And people can come into the comments and go, this is terrible, don't make this.
Nobody comes into the comments. But
it's also good to have a fresh pair of eyes on something. Like if you have one draft and it goes like the third draft, that person who's read every single draft knows what you kind of wrote in the first one. So almost like he knows what you want from that character, but it's almost like you need someone who's not involved in it to read it, to go, well, how would I know about the character? You haven't mentioned that character. Yeah, you know about it because the first draft said that, but the third draft didn't say that. So
yeah, I mean, well, it even changes then when you go shoot it, because I even found it with Pitbulls where there's stuff even from the last draft that I had on set that didn't make it in because of like we had like 2 days to shoot this thing. So it's like, right, this scene can go, and we'll do this scene and make it a little bit longer and just put in the same motivation. So by the time he gets to the end of that scene, he learned the same lesson that he's going to learn if I cut this scene. So I was just cutting, like I didn't cut a lot of scenes because it was only like a 13-page script. So I was like, there was just some stuff because of time or budget or whatever that we couldn't do. So by the time I even got it back to my editor, who's been reading this from like I started Pitbulls 5 years ago. Yeah, it was 6 years, 2016. I started it. It was a different script back then, but the same characters and a similar enough premise. And he read it from then up until now. And then he gets all the footage back and he was going, what happened to this scene? Like that's been there for like 4 drafts. Why didn't you shoot it? And I was like, well, on the day, halfway through a 10-hour day when you weren't there and we were all like starving and it was cold and it was like, right, either we can do 2 scenes or I can squash this into 1 scene and we can get the same motivation. And he's like, yeah, but how do I edit that? And I'm like, you work that out, you're the editor. And he goes,
that's your problem.
Yes. But it was the same with now. We're on the second cut, at the minute of the edit, and I'm doing notes up for him. But I've been sending that out to people too, especially people that like haven't maybe read it from like the first draft. To see what they think, because like you said, like at this stage I'm afraid, like, does that story make sense? Or if I live with this for 6 years and it makes all the sense in the world to me, but then I'm going to put it into festivals and somebody's going to be like, I don't know why that character did that.
Yes,
So I've been sending it off to a few people, and I have an executive producer on this, Amanda, and Amanda has been brilliant. But Amanda read, I think it was the 3rd draft, and originally the villain of the short, this boxing manager Charlie, had a knife at one point, and he was basically like, you do what I'm going to tell you to do, or I'm just going to cut you open and throw you in a river, that sort of thing. Like, just real like crass villain dialogue. And she said to me, she
never
was like,
that, Charlie. Never liked that.
And she was like, I don't buy that. The need for the knife. He was like, that character has such a hold in like emotional blackmail on your main character that you don't need like the weapon. So that changed. Like I took that out and started adding in lines to make it more like clear that he had this hold over him emotionally. Like he was psyching him out sort of, rather than the knife. And it works better for it. And I never would have got that. I didn't get that note from any of the other people that read it up until her. So it just maybe takes for like a fresh set of eyes to come on and be like, oh, I really like it up until this point, and then this character does this, and I don't think that makes sense. Like, and then you go, oh, maybe it doesn't. So you got to like work out what's good notes and what's bad notes, and then try and like make the best version of a thing you can. So it's a weird process.
It's also a fine balance you need with the people who you're working with or you're asking to read it, because on one hand you need someone to be critical, because obviously you don't. If you get to me, John, you say, here, can you read this for me? I'm not going to be, it's crap. I'm like, oh, this is really good, John, because I'm not.
It's crap, John. I can't read.
What's this word here? What's that mean? But you know what I mean? So you need someone who's actually going to critically read it and give you good, honest feedback. But you also need someone that actually not to shit on you, if that makes sense. Not to be, and not to
you have to accept criticism as well. It's like you're putting your whole work out there and you've read this, and then someone's going to tell you what they think's wrong with it.
Yeah, no, and that like that's
really good.
So bad. That sucks so bad when you like you've really poured your heart into something and somebody comes back and they're like, it's not your best work, and you're like, oh really? Fine, just hold on. I'm going to jump off this bridge with my script. But I mean, yeah, totally. Like it's one of those things of it's all about constructive criticism from people, but also with you have to be ready to take that criticism, because I know so many people that are like really good writers, but they just don't take notes well, and like they get really downtrodden and like get upset. They're like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever done and whatever, and it's like, no, it's fine. You just take whatever somebody said about it and see if you think that change would make a difference for you. Like, you're the storyteller, but if you've enough people telling you like this scene doesn't make sense, it probably doesn't. So you have to take that on board. You have to be as ready to collaborate as the people you're sending it to and the people you're making it with, because that's what the whole process is.
I know. It's also like about constructive criticism. If you have family members or people, like even to do a podcast, to open up and tell people that I'm going to do a podcast, I was quite nervous telling them not to, because I think we talked about it before, like what, like you feel like you have like you having a podcast makes it like you have something to say that someone hasn't said yet, you know, that way. So you're actually putting yourself out there, and if someone says, "Oh, that last suggestion, that's a bad idea," that's something you don't want to go to for your ideas. But when you told people you wanted to work in film and all too, and write movies and direct movies and all too, did you have a good like friend group around you? They actually be like, "Oh yeah, go on, John," or do you have the friends at the time going, "Why the fuck do you want to do that there? You can't do that shit."
I mean, I think I was very young when I worked it out as well. So like, people were running. I think it was around like I was a little kid. Like I was trying to make like films on a camcorder and making my like brothers and sisters act and play like 4 characters, because it was only 4 of us, like from I was like really young, and used to burn them on the DVDs and put them in the TV so my mom could see them. So I would do that and be like, I want to be a filmmaker and whatever. And at the same time, I had like kids who were my age who were probably running around being like, I want to be an astronaut, like, you know. So but then I never kind of grew out of it. Like I never got to the point where I was like, well, probably not. I should probably get an office job. It was like, no, office job sucks. I still want to be a filmmaker. But a lot of my friends want to do the same thing.
Yeah. So it kind of helped you as well, didn't it? Like motivate you and all too.
Like if you look at my cast and crew on PITBULLS, like it's a range of people throughout like different parts of my life. Like Declan, who is a previous guest on this podcast, was my production designer and art director. And we shot in the studio that he is bursar for, and made a changing room of a boxing gym in like an empty room in this bank. And he did that because I've been talking to him about wanting to do this for years, and he wants to like move into stuff like that. And we just kept talking about it. So it like even my producer, Stephen, I've known him since I was 12 or 13, I think we first met. And then Ryan, my editor, I think we met when he was 12 or 13. Like I've known some of these people that were on this set for like years, and it's just keeping in touch with those people, because they are going to like help facilitate the dream, if that makes sense, rather than go. But at the same time, you have enough confidence in them that if you were doing something and it wasn't working, that they would turn to you and be like, listen, I'm your friend. I'm not saying this to hurt you. This just isn't happening. You know what I mean? Like, so I have a blend of they'll help me do it and achieve it if they also agree with it, because they know I'm passionate or driven. But if we were going, like I've had some scripts I've sent to Stephen, he's like, we can't do this with no money. Like it's a great idea, but we can't do it. You'll have to dial it all back so we can do something. Or he'll even say, like, I sent him a poster the other day because he's the producer of the film, and he was like, okay, that poster's fine, but I wouldn't put it out yet. You need to work on it because you need to make a poster that reflects how good this short is. Like, so I was trying to put that poster up on Saturday night, and he was like, don't put it up. Like, work on it for a wee bit longer, and we'll go back and forward and we'll get it there, because I want you to put that out and it reflects how good this film is. Like, I don't want you to put this mediocre poster out, because he'd rather like tell me honestly, like, that poster's not great.
But you need that, don't you? You need someone to push you, you know, not to settle for what you think's good enough. He thinks that obviously you can do better than that there, so he's pushing you out there. Yeah, it probably sounds like he's saying it's not good enough, but he knows that you can make something better. He's just like, keep going. And you
Exactly.
need that,
Like my mum has always been like that. She's honest with me. I know people say you shouldn't show your family like your work for constructive criticism because they'll always kind of baby it. But my mum is not like that. My mum has watched some of my stuff and be like, "It's not great, John." To be honest, like I shot a music video last year and she watched it back and she was like, "It's not your best work. Like I know you can do better than that." So
That's good,
but
though.
that's a really good relationship I have with my mother then because I can show her stuff and know that she's going to be honest because she doesn't want me to go out and embarrass myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even like my parents and even like my whole family are very good at like being supportive, but also like they don't want you going out and like making a dick of yourself.
Yeah.
So they'll be honest because they'd rather hurt you a little bit now by being honest than you go out and I say I put this short into the Galway Film Festival and there's 1,000 people in a room. Imagine trying to watch this short and they're all going like, "This is awful." Like,
Yeah.
but that's way more embarrassing, you know?
Yeah, but whenever they do say it's good, then it
Mhm.
is good then, because they would
Yeah.
tell you it's crap. So you know that because sometimes you're like, are they just saying it's good because
Yeah.
they're trying to like save me my embarrassment, but they're actually criticizing you throughout the whole process, and then by the end of it, they're like, this is actually really good. You're like, fuck, it must be good. All right, so yeah, so obviously, the project you've been talking about there during the podcast, Pitbulls. Do you mind telling us a wee bit about it in terms of the storyline, or tell us what you can tell us?
Yeah, so it's about a rising boxer who has to keep a secret from his best friend while trying to get out from under the thumb of his abusive manager. So I've tried to sum that up into like one sentence in case anybody asks. So I'm not going, oh,
short and sweet there,
this.
yeah. All right, so you said you've been you wrote it five was it 5 years ago? So what
Yeah,
what gave you the
6
idea?
years now.
6 years? Oh Jesus!
Yeah.
So what gave you the idea? Is it based on any sort of true like story?
No. I don't know any boxers with a secret. But I was in uni, and me and one of my roommates were trying to work out like short films that we could do while we were still in uni, in between like classes and stuff, so we could build up like a portfolio. So we made a horror film, and then we were trying to write the next one, and we came up with this idea, Pitbulls. But back then, it was about homeless people getting like snatched off the street and made to fight.
God, that sounds
And it was a
interesting.
bit more dystopian, but we ended up doing a Kickstarter for it, and it was going to cost too much money.
Oh yeah.
And we give it a shot. I think we shot 2 days of it, and then it all kind of fell apart from there. Like we had actors drop out, and we had like uni work due, so there was like so many things stacked on that we actually didn't like end up making that version. And for years, I was like, right, well, we got that Kickstarter money, and I still have all the props and stuff we bought with it. Like we owe people a film. I just don't know how to tackle this. And then I think it was 2-3 years ago, I was going past one of those, like public washing machines that you put the money in to wash your clothes.
Yeah.
And I seen those at nighttime, and something just clicked in my head where I was like, right, that's the scene. Instead of a homeless person being made to fight, he is a fighter that becomes homeless. So I started trying to work out what the version of that story was. And it became, okay, well, he's a boxer. And he is being blackmailed because he's become homeless because the circumstances out of control, and his manager's like, right, you give me like an 80% cut, or I'm just going to tell all your sponsors you're homeless and nobody's going to want to sponsor you and you just won't have a career. And his only kind of support system's his best friend, so he can't tell him because he's too prideful. Like he's been homeless at this stage for like 10 months and he doesn't want to say, hey, I need help. So I rejigged it from there just based on the idea of, right, so if he was a boxer who was homeless and he's trying to hide it, he'd have to use one of those public washing machines. So he's begging for change during the day. He's using that change on the washing machines at night, and he's putting all his boxing gear in between fights and washing it. And I had this idea that he's there, he's got headphones in, everything he owns is washing behind him, and he starts just shadow boxing because he's got a big fight the next day, and that's all he can do to like not think about the bad situation he's in. Jeez, and that became the new version.
It's a comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, good.
So what stage did that? Is it in the editing room now? So you've shot it all. It's also all by putting it together and putting like the sound on it, not too, in terms of like music and stuff.
Yeah, so we're two cuts in. So my editor did an editor's cut, which is basically he takes all the footage we shot and just cuts it based on the script and any ideas he has that he wants to fire in stuff. And then me and the producer sat down and watched it, and we both give him like a couple of pages of notes of like, no, maybe don't use this shot, maybe you don't. And we went through and he did another cut based on those notes, and we sat down. I watched it a couple of days ago, and I'm doing up notes for it now and give it back to him. We'll just do maybe another two cuts depending upon how happy I am with it. I don't want to cut it to death, but I want to like really focus because of this is a big jump up in quality, I feel, from like the stuff I've done before, which was very like studenty and like almost amateurish because we were using like DSLRs and my friends were acting because we didn't want to like reach out to actors because we couldn't pay anybody. Whereas like I put money into this, like this had a budget and
you want to make sure it's good.
Yeah, I want the edit to reflect the film that the incredible cast and crew I ended up getting reflects all the work they put in as well, like just as much. So I'll do that, and then it's to go to the director of photography because he's going to color correct the footage, and then it's to go to the sound guy. He's going to mix the sound, and then there's a guy, Kieran, and his brother, that are going to do the score for us. So that's the last thing that needs to get done. So we've still a bit of a process to go.
Yeah, there is so much post production that goes into a movie, not post production.
Yeah.
Like after people just
shoot, yeah.
Once they shoot the movie, it's kind of done. But there's so much more. Like even like editing is such a big part of a movie. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't give an editor the credit they actually deserve, but that can literally make a film amazing or crap if the editing's bad. You know what I mean? So how much say do you give the actually editor? Like, do you give them free roaming of what they want, or do you give them sort of something that you kind of describe what you want the movie to flow like beforehand, and he tries to cut it the best suit you, or does he just cut it the way he thinks the movie should go?
See, it's kind of both. A lot of films are made in the edit. Like I know there's that story that American Beauty was like much more of a dark comedy rather than a thriller until it got to the edit, and the editor was like, no, we could do it like this, like just looking at this footage, and made that film kind of what it was. Mm-hmm. So initially I give Ryan all the footage. It's like, what was it? We shot 2 12-hour days in a row. So it was a lot of footage. And the first day was all the dialogue scenes, like except one. So the 2 biggest sets of scenes were dialogue based. So we just did all those in platform with Declan on and with Chris and Matthew and Paul. So we had the whole cast. Like that was the idea. We had the whole cast as well, and they were brilliant. But it's a lot of dialogue. Mm-hmm. And the problem with being the writer director is when I was on set, I'm cracking up because we're not making our day. Like I'm going, who wrote all this dialogue? And I'm like, oh, it's me. It's my fault. So then we transferred like all those files over to Ryan, and he started to cut based on the last draft of the script I give him. So he's looking at all the footage. He's going, right, so this is where this scene cuts. This is where this scene cuts. And then after a couple of weeks of him doing that, we sat down and we watched it. And I was like, okay, right. So like, you have to measure your expectations when you're watching a first cut because you've had this thing in your head and you've seen it. The last time I seen it, it was on like a little 12-inch monitor, like outside somebody's house filming the last scene. So this is the last time I've seen any of this. And I'm sitting down and I try and watch it with like fresh eyes and be constructive. So I'm looking and going, okay, that cut could end a little sooner. And I'm trying to make notes. And then I give him all those notes and he goes away and just tries to like match it to kind of what I've said. And then he come back and we'll try and go back and forward on it until like we're both. So I give him like enough creative license. If he turns to me and he says, yeah, you want to do that scene like this, but listen, if I cut it like this, it means like with the music under it and stuff, like that's really going to like look good. Mm-hmm. And I'll go, well, yeah, completely. Like I see what you mean. And we'll just maybe try his thing unless it's something. And even when we shot it, I had the same mentality, which was I have an incredible crew of like people that I've worked with before and that are amazing. I have like a brilliant cast. If one of them says to me, oh, I know you're trying to do it like this, but if we do it like this, I think it'll turn out a bit better. And unless I'm like really married to the idea of that shot, like I'm not going to go no, like. Because I think there's a shot in the short where the main character packs up all like his stuff, and he's going to go for the big fight. So he's hiding his sleeping bag and stuff, and he's in the town, and he walks out, and a train passes behind him on the track just over his shoulder. It's just down from the big fish we shot it, and that was my director of photography's idea, because we picked that location when we were shooting there. He was like, right, if he sleeps here, blah blah, the light's good and whatever. And he was like, listen, if we time this right, we get it that he's standing there like thinking about this big fight that he has and all the problems he has, and you could just have this train nicely pass him and like over his head in the background. Yeah. So we waited for like, I'd say like 25 minutes on a train. And there was like an AD shouting like, train, and we're like, right, Chris, quick, get in front of the camera. And like Chris was such a trooper, he stood still for like 15 minutes so the train could pass. And I never would have got that shot if I had like stuck to my guns about what I wanted that scene to be and didn't listen to my director of photography. Like, I'm getting all these people in for a reason. So especially when it comes to the edit, like, he's the editor for a reason. Like, I know I want a certain thing, it's my vision, but if it gets to the point where I'm like, this isn't working, he might see it in a way I don't see it and do something that makes it better. Or it's the same we were talking about earlier about like scripts when I'm sending people for feedback. It's the same with the actual short. Like, my producer Stephen could come in, or Amanda, I'm waiting on the notes back from Amanda at the minute, on the second cut. She might notice something I didn't notice and be like, if you just end that scene like a fraction of a second later, it's going to be way better.
Yeah.
And I just won't have seen it because I've watched it like loads of times and not noticed that would change it. So you have to try and give everybody a little bit of creative license, but also you're steering the ship. So you have to strike a balance, I think.
Yeah, because it starts and ends with you. Like, if the movie's bad or good, it falls on your shoulder. So you need to be willing to take criticism or actual advice from other people. You know, that way, because I think we all kind of realize the older we get. I know I do anyway. Like, I'm wrong most of the time. So like, even if I'm making something and I think it's going to be a certain way, or I want it to be a certain way, good chance I could be wrong, and someone has a new set of eyes, pair of eyes on it to actually tell you, here, don't do it that way, cut it here, or let the scene go on a bit longer. That could change that whole scene and the whole emotion within that scene.
Yeah, completely. Like, the whole process is collaboration, but because there's so many moving parts, somebody kind of has to be there to like oversee the whole thing, and that's a director's job. So, you know, we're doing like 2 12-hour days in a row. Like I said, like, it's long, and I have to be thinking the whole time like how this all fits together at the end of it.
Yeah,
because each person on that set's thinking, right, he needs me to get this shot a certain way, or this sound needs to be good, so where's the best place I can put the boom mic? They're thinking in the moment, whereas I have to think in the moment, but then also in the back of my head be like, right, when this gets to the edit, this all needs to make sense.
Yeah,
you put it in order.
You need to think of a smaller picture, but then at the end of the day, or during the scene, you need to look at the bigger picture as well. Like, you need to look 4 or 5 months down the line how it's going to look on a bigger screen, not just how it looks on a 12-inch monitor.
Yeah,
that's the hard part.
It's the same with this idea of I'm hoping to enter into some festivals. Like, there's going to be people seeing it that have never seen it before, and it needs to like translate well. So I sent it to a friend who hasn't read a draft from like the first one and probably doesn't fully remember the story. And I sent them the second cut and was like, can you watch this and tell me if the story still makes sense? Like, the characters all make sense. Yeah. And he came back and he was like, yeah, like, I completely followed it and it all works. So sometimes it's about maybe like stepping back and letting somebody else have a look at it for a minute, because you've been like in it for years. So
yeah, like you're embedded in the storyline, you know the characters, you know which way the dialogue is going to go, so you're obviously biased towards it, so you see the problems he has. You need someone who isn't involved to see the problems. But how long is the actual movie? I know it's a short movie, so how long is the short movie?
At the minute it's 12 minutes and 30 odd seconds. So for a 13-page script, that's pretty good. But normally it's meant to be like a page antiquates to a minute.
So what's next? So you're obviously going to cut it, you're going to edit it, you're going to put it all together, all the whole works. So you're going to enter it into the film festivals?
Yeah, I've got a list of festivals at the minute. I sat down the other day and went through what's open and what's quote unquote a good festival. Like, what's something that if I put it in, there's going to be eyes on it from actually industry professionals or whatever. So at the minute, the Galway Film Festival is open, and so is Rain Dance in London, and they are both Oscar qualifiers. Now, obviously, that's not like the goal. I'm not like, I'm going to put this short in and it's going to win Oscars.
You never know. Never know,
well, I can hope, but that's not where I'm starting out. but the idea is that at least means they have like a sort of a pedigree, you know what I mean? Like if it's an Oscar qualifier, it means it's a really good festival. And I know a lot of people have done very, very well off those festivals. So I made a list of like, where do I want it? Like, where do I want it to get seen and what's open so I can actually put it in. And I'm just looking at, because I do want like a crowd to see it. It was like we were talking about earlier with cinema. Like I want people to see it on like a big screen and have like a proper audience reaction. So it's just trying to find out where that's going to happen, because it's difficult with, you know, the COVID.
And how do you get it into these festivals? Do you need to submit it to get an application form?
Yeah, you submit it. You basically I upload the video and then submit it. Now the only issue is with festivals, it can't be anywhere else. Like it can't be on YouTube if I'm going to put it in the festival. So I can't actually show it to anybody till I try and put it in the festival. So I'll send it to say Rain Dance and they'll look at it, and if they like it, they'll screen it in the festival, and then brilliant. But if they don't like it, I'll just get like an email back being like, not really for us, no thanks. And I just have to keep kind of trying from there. Like there's no guarantee it'll get into any of these, because it's film festivals are mostly like competition based as well.
Yeah, 100%. So when do them two festivals take place?
I think they're later in the year, because if they're open now, it normally means it's a couple of months before the actual event, because they have to get time to go through all the shorts that people are going to submit to see what they want to screen. So I'm going to do like maybe 2 or 3 more cuts of this with my editor, and then send it away to get all the bells and whistles put on it, and then it'll try and hopefully start a festival run. So I'd say maybe the end of the year, if it gets in, it will hopefully be up at the end of the year and people can actually go see it and stuff. Because I know Dublin Film Festival was on last week, and they did a thing because they can't do the festival, which is you go on their website and you can pay a certain amount of money for like a virtual ticket, and you can just watch all the shorts and features that are part of the thing. So it might be a case of that's the way people can see it in a while.
And that's good though as well. That means there's gonna be a lot more people, because a lot of people can't travel down to Dublin or travel to Galway or even go to London to actually see these movies. But if they're online, it could be a bigger audience to see the movie if you get in, of course.
I hope so.
Yeah. I think we'll leave it there. I know we want to talk about obviously the production company, but obviously we've taken too much of your time. But hopefully you get you and Declan on and actually talk about it a bit more in detail later on. But
of course.
I just want to say cheers. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was great talking to you. And
best of luck, mate, with the film.
The movie,
thank you so much.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I'm going to try my camera again, but it's not happening.
I don't worry about it. It's fine, sure.
I really appreciate just having me on.
You are now listening to MCPodcasting.